Imagine paying dues so your grass gets trimmed, and then having two strangers with plastic zip ties tell you they can arrest you on your own porch. What would you do? Freeze, fold, or fight back? My name's Mike. I'm a dad, a neighbor, a guy who mows in old sneakers and grills on Saturdays, and, yeah, I'm also the county's chief of police. I don't flash that around at block parties. I wave, bring potato salad like everybody else, and keep to my side of the fence. But when people start inventing authority, when they take the word association and dress it up like sheriff, that's when the quiet neighbor part of me steps aside and the trained part steps in. We moved to Lake Willow Estates on a warm afternoon in late spring. The street looked like an ad oaks throwing shade across the asphalt. Kids on bikes. Somebody's wind chimes trying a melody. Paula from next door brought over lemonade with too much sugar. The way I like it. Mr. Jenkins shuffled over later. Cane tapping. Eyes bright, like he was permanently amused at life. The HOA welcome packet sat heavy on our kitchen table. Thick as a novel nobody really wanted to read. My wife, Jenna, flipped through, making little sounds. Paint palette. Okay. Fence height. Sure. Trash can placement. All right. Nothing shocking. Nothing crazy. Back then the president was a quiet guy named Walt, who thought meetings should be short and emails should be shorter. He cared about the pool pump and the pothole by the mail kiosk. He was the kind of volunteer who puts folding chairs back without being asked. And then Walt moved to be closer to his grandkids. And the board held an election. Enter Karen. She didn't so much win as arrive. Clipboard. Sunglasses. A smile too tight to be friendly and too polished to be honest. She liked to do dramatic pauses while reading rules aloud. The way some folks quote scripture to win an argument. We have standards, she'd say, tapping the binder spine. That's why property values are so high. There's people who mistake a laminated page for a badge. Karen lived in that mistake. The first fine under Karen showed up like a bad birthday card. Decorative lighting out of compliance. We'd hung soft white string lights along the fence for a cookout. Apparently, they needed to be warm amber, not soft white. Which, I swear, looks the same to any human eye not named Karen. I paid the tiny fine just to keep the peace. I'm not above choosing peace, even when it tastes like cardboard. The second fine was for my truck. An old work truck. Clean. Registered. Not a monster, just a practical, dented, honest vehicle. No trucks overnight. The notice said, no vehicles that disrupt community aesthetics. Aesthetics. The word did push-ups in that letter. I wrote back, I dispute the citation. Our city code allows this vehicle. Our state law preempts HOA restrictions that conflict with public right-of-way and driveway parking. Please provide the specific covenant clause and any amendments duly recorded. I got a reply with the same paragraph. Copied twice. Like an echo in a cheap hallway. Then, a knock. Karen parked her golf cart sideways across my driveway like she was blocking a runway. Two board members flanked her. Nodding. Like dashboard. Bobbleheads. Mike. She said. We've discussed this several times. We've emailed once. I said. And I asked for the clause. She tapped the binder. Page 19. I opened to page 19. It referenced commercial vehicles left on the street beyond midnight. My truck wasn't commercial. It wasn't on the street. It was in my driveway, being, like, extremely minding its own business. I pointed to the words. She pursed her lips and said, "It disrupts aesthetics." "Aesthetics isn't a law," I replied. "It's a taste." She leaned forward like she was about to whisper a secret. "We can escalate." I let the words sit between us like a rock. "Escalate how? Fines. Liens," she said. Then used the phrase that always makes my neck itch. "Enforcement action." She said it with a capital E and a capital A. The next envelope started with "Final warning," which was funny because it was also the second notice. The fine climbed. The tone sharpened. "Failure to comply will result in immediate enforcement." Immediate sounded like a threat made by someone who needs you to be scared to make their point. 2 evenings later, as we were setting plates on the table, there was that knock again, sharp. Rehearsed. I opened the door to 2 men in navy polos with embroidered patches that tried hard to look official. Lanyards. Shiny laminate. Cheap badge clips. One had a ring of zip ties hanging from a belt loop like a trophy. The taller one spoke with a voice borrowed from cop shows. "Sir, we're with HOA code enforcement. Due to repeated non-compliance, we're here to take you into custody." "Into custody," I repeated, deliberately slow. "For a truck in my driveway. For violations and failure to comply," he said, jaw working. "Who are you again?" I asked. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is make a liar repeat it. "HOA code enforcement." The shorter one chimed in. "We have authority to detain." I tilted my head. "From who?" "The board," he said. "The president." Inside. My pulse stayed even. On my entryway shelf, a little body cam sat in its dock. Blinking blue. Call me paranoid. Or call me a guy who knows that some scenes are worth capturing. I slipped it into my pocket when I reached for my keys earlier. Because a hunch is just the brain's way of nudging the future. "Okay," I said, sounding on purpose like a tired dad. "Show me your legal authority. City ordinance number, statute, case law, anything." "Sir," the tall one said, lifting a zip tie. "We can do this the easy way." "Don't," I said. "Do not step into my home." They shifted forward a subtle, ugly little lean. That's when I let the mask drop. I took out my wallet, flipped it open to a badge that wasn't bought on the internet, and spoke low, so the words wouldn't get lost in anything fancy. "I'm a sworn peace officer. You two have just impersonated law enforcement, attempted unlawful detention, and trespassed. Hands where I can see them. Step back." The short one's eyes went wide. The tall one stumbled over, "We're contractors." Contractors, for who he glanced down the street. Karen's golf cart sat in the shade by the clubhouse. That fake casual distance people keep when they want to watch a fire without smelling the smoke. I called dispatch. Kept it calm. 2 individuals impersonating law enforcement. Silver Birch Lane. No emergency. I'll maintain. 2 cruisers rolled up quiet, like they were trying not to wake a sleeping baby. My officers, good people, steady did the separating, the cuffing, the rights. The taller one tried logic. The shorter one tried tears. Both tried to stand on a stool made of air. They were processed. Their badges were bagged. Their statements were taken. Threats became quotes. Quotes became evidence. That night, our neighborhood sounded like what it is, a place where people live. Spoons in bowls. Television laughter. A basketball bouncing on somebody's driveway. And underneath it, the whisper, "What happened?" at the station. The pair unraveled the way cheap rope does when you pull the right string. We were told to encourage compliance. The tall one said, "We were told to be persuasive." The short one added, like he thought the synonym made it gentler, "They said the president wanted action. They said there was a list of problem homes. They said my address was underlined." I'm careful with words. Always. So hear me here, in my opinion, based on what they both volunteered. Karen confused community standards with personal kingdom. That confusion doesn't turn into law just because you puff it up. It turns into danger. The district attorney's office doesn't take HOA squabbles. They take crimes. Impersonating a police officer is a crime. Attempted unlawful detention is a crime. Conspiracy happens when two or more people decide to make a wrong thing happen and then take a step toward it. The steps were right there on my porch. Wearing navy polos and borrowed authority. By morning, there were charges. By afternoon, there was an arrest warrant with Karen's name on it. The paper didn't tremble when I held it. Paper never does. But my hands were steady. And my voice was steady. And steadiness is a kind of kindness when the truth is heavy. We asked Karen to come in. She arrived with a lawyer who looked like a man who'd been promised he was handling a small misunderstanding. She wore that tight smile like armor. "Mike," she said, "this has gotten out of hand. We were simply enforcing the rules. You were imagining the rules had a jail." I said. I slid the folder across. Photos of the fake badges. Transcripts. The body cam footage. The part where the tall one mispronounced municipal twice. She read. Her tapping fingers stopped. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Then cleared it again like the second time, might find better words. "We dispute the intent," he said. "That's fine," I said. Intent is a thing juries decide. I placed her under arrest. Calm. Respectful. Routine. In the way a seatbelt is routine, it saves you from flying through the glass. She left the station without theatrics. Meanwhile, the neighborhood had its own kind of court in the clubhouse. Folding chairs. A card table pretending to be a dais. That smell of old coffee that never really leaves. The vice president looked pale as chalk. "Emergency session," he said. "We need to address the actions of our president." Folks stood up who hadn't stood up before. Paula. Sweet voice. That could cut through nonsense like a knife through frosting. Said, "This isn't how neighbors treat neighbors." A young dad with paint on his jeans said, "I got a warning for a sandbox that was too bright." A sandbox. Mr. Jenkins shook his cane and said, "The rules was about lawns, not prisons." Grammar aside, amen. When they called the vote, hands shot up like a field of wheat catching wind. Unanimous. Karen was removed. Barred from appointing herself to anything but her own calendar. The room didn't cheer. It exhaled. That night, I walked the block. Hoodie up. Hands in pockets. People nodded from porches. "Thank you," they said. Which always makes me uncomfortable. We were scared. They confessed. Which made me angry in that quiet, focused way. Fear is not a tool we should ever hand to a neighbor. You ever notice how a neighborhood breathes easier when bullies lose their script the next morning? The sun felt brighter. Maybe it was just me. Or maybe the air really does change when the balance gets put back. The two contractors took plea deals fast, in my opinion, and it's just that it was the right path. Admit the wrong. Promise to never act like a cop again. Take community service that actually serves. Pay fines that sting enough to remember. They were followers who tried to play leaders in a game they didn't understand. I don't build cages for people like that, if I can build guardrails. Karen didn't take a deal. Karen took a stance. Her lawyer tried out phrases like administrative misunderstanding, decorative insignia, and my personal favorite, temporary restraint to prevent continued violation. No. The court has a talent for detecting nonsense dressed up like law. The days before trial had a quiet rhythm. Jenna and I drank coffee on the porch. A blue jay bullied the feeder. I oiled the gate hinge that squeaked like a violin student. Every so often, I'd catch a glance through the blinds across the street. Then the blinds would snap shut. Like the house itself was embarrassed for snooping. Fear takes time to drain. Like a sink that someone stuffed with paper towels. The new board called me. Would I sit on a temporary committee to review the covenants? I said yes, with conditions. Plain language. Clear processes. An appeal pathway that doesn't require a degree. Enforcement that looks like reminders and conversations. Not threats, printed in bold. We met on Tuesday nights. Pizza boxes open. Sticky notes everywhere. We talked about mailbox colors and solar panels and holiday inflatables. Paula's snowman stays non-negotiable. We wrote sentences like, if your plant pokes over the fence, your neighbor can trim it and leave a friendly note. We banned phrases like immediate enforcement. We made templates that started with, hey neighbor, instead of notice of violation. The tone changed the temperature. People can feel that. Trial came on a rainy Monday that made the courthouse steps slick. Karen wore a suit the color of steel and a look like confidence practicing in a mirror. The courtroom wasn't dramatic, no wood gleam. No echo. Just a place where words get measured. The prosecutor laid it out simple. Two men, not law enforcement, told a resident they had authority to detain. They carried badges designed to deceive. They referenced orders from the president. Then witnesses. The taller one, sighing, told the truth he'd been dodging. The shorter one, wringing his hands, said he never wanted to go inside the house. I just thought we'd scare him. That line hung in the room like smoke. My turn on the stand. I swore the oath. I kept my answers clean. Yes. I'm the chief. Yes. I showed my badge after they claimed authority. Yes. I warned them to step back. No. I did not escalate. I de-escalated. Yes. The body cam captured the exchange. No. I did not edit the footage. Facts are a kind of mercy. They don't ask you to embellish. Karen's lawyer tried to paint me as the intimidating one. Isn't it true, Chief, that your status could have influenced their fear? People who impersonate cops, I said, should be afraid of real ones. The judge hid a smile behind a legal pad. The jury didn't hide anything. Closing arguments were theater. The defense tried to sell community protection. The prosecution sold reality. Impersonating an officer is a crime that erodes the public's trust and endangers everyone. The verdict came back quick. Guilty on the charge that mattered most. Sentencing landed where the law lives, supervised probation. Fines. A ban on serving on any HOA or similar authority for a set number of years. Mandatory training on boundaries between private rules and public law. Not the end of a life. Just the end of a bad habit with power. Some folks asked if I felt vindicated. That word's too clean. What I felt was a neighborhood returning to itself. And also this relief that the story wouldn't be repeated somewhere else with someone less equipped to say no. After the verdict, the board held an open house in the clubhouse. Doors propped wide like a promise. No dice, no gavel, just tables with cookies and a giant poster board that read, "What should we fix?" people wrote in Sharpie. "Trash pickup hours, be realistic. Let us plant veggie beds in the side yard. Holiday lights until New Year's. Please." Someone drew a cartoon of a golf cart with a siren crossed out in red. We passed the revised rules by a simple majority that looked like a tidal wave. And then we did the unthinkable. We enforced them gently. A teenager left a basketball hoop too close to the sidewalk. The note that went up read, "Hey, mind scooting it back a foot so strollers can get by. Thanks, signed, Maya." Board volunteer. The hoop moved before lunch. Meanwhile, Karen appealed. Of course she did. Appeals are part of the system that protects us all, even when they're used by the person who wronged us. The appellate decision arrived months later, conviction affirmed. The opinion used phrases like clear deception and non-delegable police powers. Dry words. Dripping truth. The change in our little world showed up in details. The newsletter swapped stock photos of mansions for snapshots of neighbor dogs. The annual meeting started with a land acknowledgement written by a high schooler and ended with a sign-up sheet for a park cleanup. The budget line for enforcement shrank. The line for picnic tables grew. Mr. Jenkins donated a bench in honor of his late wife, carved with a little music note. The board approved it in, like, 2 minutes. Old board would have argued about the font. One Saturday, I was setting out folding chairs for a block movie night. Kids had voted for a cartoon with a talking rat who cooks when a man I didn't recognize walked up slow. Nervous energy like a hummingbird. "Chief," he said. Half whisper. "Name's Ray. I live 2 streets over. Need to tell you something." He recounted. Halting. A scene from early Karen days, a threatened lean for an American flag mounted at the wrong angle. A meeting where he was told his military service didn't exempt him from decor guidelines. A letter that made his wife cry. He moved the flag. He moved it back after everything changed. "I just wanted to say thanks," he said, staring at his shoes. "For the line." I clapped his shoulder. "You drew it too. You stayed. You waited for it to be redrawn, right?" He nodded. Eyes shiny. The way some men let themselves feel without letting any of it spill. You think the story ends there. But neighborhoods are like old radios. You tune in one station and pick up 3. Once the big noise quieted, smaller signals came through. Honest and crackly. Paula asked for a community garden. Raised beds along the retention pond, she said, waving her hands. Tomatoes. Herbs. Maybe sunflowers, just 'cause they're happy. Old rules had banned agricultural displays. New rules called them edible landscaping and encouraged them behind waist-high fences. We built the beds one Saturday with lumber that still smelled like pine. The first basil harvest turned the whole place into a pizza commercial. A dispute popped up about a cedar fence between 2 yards. One neighbor swore it was 2 inches over the line. The other swore the survey was wrong, and also maybe cursed the tape measure under his breath. The old board would have printed threats. The new board brought lemonade and a mediator who sat on that fence like a literal metaphor and got them to agree on a fresh survey and a cost split that felt fair. Not a headline. But peace rarely makes one. Holiday season arrived with inflatables. The rule now read, tasteful. Safe. No sound after 9. Tasteful is subjective. Sure. But the sound rule wasn't. The one loud snowman that sang off-key carols after midnight got unplugged gently with a note that said, "He can sing again at 8 a.m." Even the snowman looked relieved. We added a good neighbor clause, not enforceable like law, but aspirational, like a chorus. Everyone can hum. It went. Before reporting a violation, try a conversation. Assume good faith. Offer help. Remember, we live here together. Cheesy maybe. Effective, absolutely. A retired electrician started fixing porch lights. A teenager started bringing in cans for the couple who traveled for work. Compliance ticked up because kindness did. People sometimes ask. But what if someone refuses? Then you follow the process we wrote on one page with big letters. Notice. Conversation. Second notice. Appeal. Board vote. Third notice. Small fine. And if someone wants to fight beyond that, there's the regular courts. Not a fake one, invented in a clubhouse. Nobody needs to cosplay jailers when the real system messy. Slow. Accountable, exists. One afternoon, I received a certified letter addressed to whom it may concern. Inside was an apology, written in tidy cursive. I was one of the bobbleheads. It began. I voted for Karen because I thought strictness equals safety. It doesn't. I'm sorry. I'm baking pies for the cookout, if anyone wants a slice. It was signed by Marlene, former treasurer, who'd spent the past year looking like a ghost of herself. She showed up to the cookout with 2 pecan pies and a resolve to never let fear outsource her judgment again. Sometimes, the past echoes. A firm from the city emailed an offer. Professional HOA enforcement services. It was dressed up like a brochure for a luxury hotel. Glossy. Phrases like compliance optimization. They included a photo of a uniform that looked suspiciously like a police kit but wasn't. The board forwarded it to me with a note. Hard pass, I wrote back. Very hard pass. We put the brochure in the recycling. No boomerang. I won't pretend I didn't think about Karen now and then. How does someone go from neighbor to pretend badge? Power small enough to fit in a binder can still go to someone's head. Somewhere in there is a fear of losing control. Of things changing. Of not being in charge of the picture on the postcard. None of that excuses harm. But understanding it keeps you from becoming it. There's a day etched in my head, the morning a moving truck backed into Karen's driveway. No fanfare. No goodbye note. Just cardboard and quiet. I didn't go over. I didn't gloat. I nodded to the movers. A week later, a young couple rolled fresh paint on the front door in a color the old rules would have called too cheerful. We called it Welcome Home. Months later, the county hosted a roundtable about HOAs at the library, a beige room with buzzing lights and cookies on a tray. I sat with a city attorney, a professor who studies housing, and a pastor who jokes he mediates more fence fights than weddings. The room filled with people from neighborhoods with names like Whispering Pines and Eagle Ridge. All of them carrying stories, like cups of hot coffee, they were afraid to spill. A woman in the back spoke about being fined for a wheelchair ramp that didn't match the aesthetic. A man told a story about a flag that wasn't the right size. A veteran who cried. And a board president who called the police to report a hostile display. My officer, brought him a measuring tape and a hug. The room laughed. Then sighed. The professor talked about private governance and the limits of consent when your home is on the line. The pastor said, when the rule book starts to sound like scripture, ask who wrote it and why. I told our story, with the boring parts left in on purpose. The boring parts, emails, procedures, Appeals are the guardrails. I said the line that Paula later wrote on a poster board. Boards are supposed to be service, not thrown. I watched people write that down. Heads nodding like metronomes set to finally. A young man approached me afterward. Cap in hand. Voice wobbly. My board hired security too, he said. They didn't go as far as zip ties. But they wore those fake patches. You know, stood in front of my door while I was feeding my baby and told me my grill violated safety protocols. My wife was terrified. He swallowed. I didn't know I could say no. You can, I said. You can always say no to made-up authority. Then I told him the steps document. Report. Involve real law if someone impersonates it. Show up at meetings. Run for a seat if you have it in you. He stared at the cookies like they might tell him what to do next. I'm not a meeting guy. Bring someone who is, I said. Bring a neighbor who likes sticky notes. It's funny. The way change travels. It sneaks along like a cat on fences. A month after the round table, I got a thank you card from Eagle Ridge. They'd rewritten their enforcement section. Added an appeals panel with rotating members. Banned look-alike uniforms. And started their own good neighbor clause. Complete with a cartoon of a smiley mailbox. Cheesy. Yeah. But the kind of cheese that feeds you. Back home. Our troubles came not from power now, but from ordinary life. A storm dropped a branch the size of a small car across Birch Lane. The board's group chat lit up, not with blame, but with who's got a chainsaw. A lady down the street had knee surgery. Sign-up sheet filled in a day. The pool pump broke. Instead of wild accusations, folks brought coolers to the green space and turned a Thursday into a picnic with misting fans and a sprinkler for the kids. The HOA bought extra popsicles and called it mitigation. Once, an out-of-state investor sent a letter to the board asking if short-term rentals were permitted. The board didn't panic. It formed a small task group. Polled residents. Read city ordinances. And then wrote a nuanced rule. A minimum stay of a certain number of nights. Quiet hours. Parking limits. A cap on how many homes could be registered. And a requirement to post a hotline number on the fridge for concerns. Was it perfect? No. Did it balance property rights and peace? Yeah. Kinda beautifully. Sometimes I still catch myself rehearsing the porch scene in my head. The way you replay a near miss on the freeway and think about the ways it could have gone wrong. What if I hadn't had the body cam near the door? What if I'd been out and Jenna had answered? What if those men had found someone else whose fear would have frozen them long enough for harm? We make our neighborhood safer when we quit, pretending that power is a costume you can buy. We do it when we stop using policy like a cudgel and start using it like a broom, something to sweep with, not hit with. And we do it when we remember to knock on a door with kindness before we write a letter with capitals. Now, if you're waiting for a final flourish, I don't got one. I have a picture in my head. It's dusk. The park by the little lake glows. Grill smoke curls. Lazy. Kids shriek at the cold splash of the sprinklers. The clubhouse door is propped open with a stack of board games instead of a stack of warnings. On the picnic table sits a pair of plastic zip ties. Relics from the community garden build. Next to a hand-lettered sign that says, "For crafts only." I chuckle every time. 'Cause, yeah, sometimes the universe sends you a joke you earned. Neighbors wave with their whole hands again. The line holds. Anyone else ever had a board try to play cop at your house? What would you do? You know, if two strangers with internet badges told you to put your hands behind your back on your own porch, the thing about trust is, it's built in teaspoons and spilled in buckets. After the trial, after the rewrites, after the picnics, there was still the work of teaspoons. Take the newsletter. It used to be a scold dressed as a memo. Now, it reads like a chat on the sidewalk. Hey neighbors. Fall cleanup this Saturday. Need folks with rakes and folks with playlists. There's a corner for small wins where we celebrate stuff like someone returned a library book that's been missing for 2 years. And Paula's rosemary bush survived the freeze. Miracles are real. We added a monthly rule spotlight in plain words. This month, fences. Keep them under 6 feet. If your neighbor's ivy is climbing like it wants to see the sky, talk before you trim. If you trim, bag it. If you disagree, coffee together first. If you still disagree, write us. Seriously. We're here. It's harder to be mad at people who sound like people. We also started a listening bench. Sounds corny. I know. It's literally a bench with a plaque that reads, sit, talk. We'll listen. Board members take turns sitting there on Saturday mornings. People bring coffee. Sometimes they bring complaints. Sometimes they bring muffins. Sometimes they just want to say, hey. The light at the corner is flickering. Sometimes they want to tell you about their mom's surgery or their kid's spelling bee. Governance is 90% relationships and 10% rules. I used to think those numbers were flipped. The first time I sat the bench, a guy named Hector came by with a stroller. He nodded stiffly and said, we're new. We heard this place was intense. He glanced at the stroller like he was worried the wheels might be a violation. I laughed. Too loud. Sorry. And said, we're intense about popsicles now. He smirked. Good. 'Cause my kid is intense about popsicles. He pointed at the signboard near the pool. What's with the no glass rule? Safety. I said. Bare feet and broken glass don't get along. He nodded. Makes sense. Then he told me he builds cabinets and could fix the clubhouse closet door that never quite latches. By afternoon, it latched like a dream. We put his name in the small wins box and left brownies on his porch. The good kind with the chewy edges. We did have a flare-up. A rumor started that the board was secretly raising dues. It spread like rumors do, fast and fact-free. The old board would have sent a stern letter. The new board live-streamed a Q&A from the clubhouse with a whiteboard and a pie chart that looked like a lopsided pizza. Here's the budget. Maya said. Here's the dream budget. Here's how we get from one to the other without scaring anybody. Thoughts by the end. The comments section had devolved into people debating pineapple on pizza. I'll take that fight any day. One evening, as twilight painted the street that soft blue, Mr. Jenkins waved me over. You did good, he said. Voice like gravel rolled in velvet. You could have crushed folks. You made 'em stand up instead. He tapped his cane. That's leadership. I was angry. I admitted. Course you was, he said. Anger's a spark. You just didn't burn down the house with it. I walked home thinking about spark and house, and how some people never learn the difference. My phone buzzed email from a reporter wanting a quote for a piece on HOA overreach. I said what I always say to media. Talk to my neighbors. Talk to Paula. Talk to Maya. Talk to Hector with the stroller. They did. The article came out with a headline that didn't make me cringe. It wasn't about me. It was about a place figuring itself out. A year and a half after the porch, the county held a ceremony to honor community volunteers. They gave out little plaques made of something that looked like wood from far away and like plastic up close. Paula got one for the garden. Maya got one for rewriting bylaws into readable English. Mr. Jenkins refused one and then accepted it when the mayor whispered, "It's really for your wife." I got one too, which felt strange. The mayor read my name, stumbled over the title people always do, and then said, "For reminding everyone where authority ends and where being a good neighbor begins." On the way out, a man in a suit I recognized from the courthouse lobby stopped me. He'd been at Karen's hearings, sitting in the back, taking notes. The way some folks watch storms roll in. "Chief," he said, extending a hand. "I represent several homeowner associations. Thought you should know your case changed our trainings." We added a slide. Do not, under any circumstances, create uniforms or badges that resemble law enforcement. He grimaced. "It's a long slide." "Good," I said. "Make the font big." He chuckled. The way people do when they're a little embarrassed about the past and a little hopeful about the future. The neighborhood kept doing ordinary miracles. The park bench under the willow got a coat of paint. Someone organized a pet parade. A corgi dressed like a taco won and didn't care. A little free library appeared, stocked with paperbacks and a note that said, "Take one. Leave one. Or just take one. It's okay." A kid drew a chalk crown on the sidewalk in front of the clubhouse, then crossed it out and wrote, "No queens. Only neighbors. Okay." That one made me snort laugh. And every so often, a new envelope would appear on someone's door. Gentle. Not scary. Friendly reminder. It would say something like, "Hey, your grass is reaching for the stars. Can you mow when you get a chance?" People mowed. If they couldn't, someone else did. Our rules didn't become mush. They became humane. If you've listened this long, maybe you're here because your own envelope is on the kitchen counter, making your stomach knot. Maybe there's a Karen in your story, different haircut. Same hunger for control. Maybe there's a golf cart patrolling your cul-de-sac like it's a border. If that's you, here's my closing. For now, document everything. Talk first. Be steady. Read the law where you live. Shine a light, not a flamethrower. Don't get tricked by costumes. And when someone says we can escalate, remember, you can de-escalate by insisting on what's real. Neighbors fix what bullies break. Always have. Always will. What would you do if two strangers with shiny laminates knocked on your door and tried to take you away from your own dinner table? Anyone else got a story where a board forgot it lives on your street? Not above it. A year rolled by like a slow parade. And the thing about peace is, it makes room for stories that we're hiding. One of them walked up my driveway on a Tuesday afternoon, hat in hand. Posture saying, "Sorry," before his mouth did. Name was Al. Big guy. Calluses that told you he worked for a living. "Chief," he said. "Mind if I sit a minute?" We sat on the porch steps. The cedar smelled sharp from the afternoon sun. Al looked at his boots. "Back when Karen ran things," he said. "I said yes to stuff I should have said no to. I helped hang no parking overnight signs where we never had 'em before. I knocked on doors with letters I didn't read. Just handed 'em over, 'cause I was asked." He swallowed. "I figured. You know. That's community. Help the board. Help the street. You thought you were doing right. I said. He nodded. Then, those two clowns showed up in uniforms and I realized the train I'd been pushing got put on the wrong tracks. He cleared his throat. I'm sorry I didn't ask questions sooner. I shrugged. Gentle. Asking now counts. He smiled with one corner of his mouth. Like a curtain barely pulled back. I want to fix stuff. Lend my hands. He scratched his jaw. I'm good with a post-hole digger. Bad with paper. We got holes that need posts, I said. And signs that need the right words. I pointed down the block. Start at the park. That rusty swing set's been begging for help. By Saturday. Al had a small crew of teenagers with gloves too big for their hands and grins too big for their faces. Setting new posts like they were planting a promise. The old set came down with a groan. The new one stood with a quiet kind of pride. Paula showed up with lemonade halfway through. And Al's ears went pink when she thanked him. It ain't sorry, it is something, he said, catching himself. Then, laughing at the catch. Feels good. We hung a small plaque on one of the posts. Neighbors did this. No committee names. No titles. Just truth in Cedar. Meanwhile, the county asked me to teach a Know Your Lines workshop at the library. The director put out folding chairs and a bowl of mints that tasted like toothpaste. Which, honestly, made me smile. The room filled with folks from across town, young families. Retirees. Landlords. Renters who wished they were owners. Board members with furrowed brows. And at least one guy who looked like he'd come for the mints. I started with a story, our porch. The knock. The fake badges, because stories slide in where statutes bounce off. Then I drew a simple chart on a whiteboard. Public law, I wrote, is the roof. Private agreements live under it. I wrote, can, under simple things, paint pallets. Lawn height. Pool hours. I wrote, cannot, under things that smell like police powers. Detaining. Searching. Seizing. If your board's plan looks like a scene from a cop show, I said, take the remote away. Hands shot up. A woman with a neat bob asked, what about speeders? Kids play on our street, and folks fly by. I said, call traffic. Ask for temporary speed signs. A patrol, now and then. Get neighbors to stand with safety vests for a please slow down day. Bake cookies for the officer who parks a cruiser at the entrance. Honey beats vinegar unless you're catching fruit flies. A man in a faded veteran cap lifted his hand. Can they tell me how to fly my flag? They can tell you where to mount it so it doesn't tear the soffit. I said, they can ask for size that fits the house. They cannot ban a flag protected by law. And, brother, if anyone uses the word offensive because you served, tell him I've got a dictionary and a spine. He laughed, then coughed, then wiped his eyes when he thought nobody was looking. An older lady whispered from the second row. What if they threaten a lien I talked about? Process, how a board must follow what's written and recorded. How due process ain't optional. How a lien is last, not first. Get advice. I said, document. Don't panic at scary fonts. After. People lined up with stories, like beads on a string, each one different. Each one familiar. They said my wreath was political. They said my wheelchair ramp was too visible. They said my granddaughter's chalk art invited graffiti. I repeated my chorus talk. Document. Remember the roof of the law. And don't let a clipboard become a crown. On my way out, a teen boy with paint under his fingernails stopped me by the return shelf. "Sir," he said, voice barely above the hum of the lights, "I want to run for the youth seat on our HOA committee." "Good," I said. "Bring friends. Bring snacks. Bring patience. And when someone reads a rule like it's scripture, ask who wrote the verse and who it's loving." He grinned. "I'm gonna put that on a shirt. Make sure to spell who right," I said. He snorted and said, "My bad. My mom's an English teacher. She'll make me." Back at Lake Willow. The garden went from dream to harvest, like time-lapse. Tomatoes blushed. Bees worked like tiny union members. Paula started a take-what-you-need basket by the path. Kids learned to pinch basil without ripping the stem. You could smell the whole neighborhood learning patience. One evening, as the sky went purple, Jenna squeezed my hand and said, "I like us here." I said. "Me too," she said. Even with the drama, I thought about it. The drama ain't the headline anymore, I said. The neighbors are. Before all this. Long before golf carts and zip ties. I handled a case that taught me the weight of lines. A store called about a shoplifter. The kind of call that can feel routine. The suspect was a young woman. Thin as a shadow. Eyes darting like birds. She'd slipped baby formula into her bag. The manager demanded an arrest. His voice was hard, with rules. Like metal, hammered too thin. We checked the footage. We found more than the act. We found the why she fed a baby. I followed policy. I wrote it up. But I also made a call. A church pantry sent milk and diapers. A social worker stepped in like a pro. The store got its apology and its receipt. The woman got food. Not a record. The law did not bend. Compassion walked beside it. I carry that day in my pocket with my badge. Not 'cause I'm some hero, far from it, but because the line isn't there to cut people. It's there to protect them. Every time someone tries to dress power as concern, I hear that manager's voice again. So sure that punishment was the only way to make the world square. When Karen's crew stood on my porch with plastic cuffs and borrowed authority, something old and hard-pressed in my chest. Not anger. Exactly. A refusal. I wasn't gonna let a neighbor become a defendant because someone liked the sound of the word enforcement. I wasn't gonna let my wife's dinner go cold because a board thought aesthetics rhymed with arrest. So, yeah. Maybe I was primed for that moment. Maybe we all carry little magnets that pull certain stories to us. Mine pulls the ones where rules forget their purpose. If that sounds preachy, sorry, I really don't mean it to. I just want you to know why I did not slam a door or swing a fist. Why I ask questions and let the tape roll. Why I use the quiet voice that makes decisions stick. After the workshop, after summer peeled into fall, after the basil turned leggy and the pumpkins showed up on stoops, a letter arrived addressed to the board but marked for Mike. The handwriting was careful. Like every loop got a second try. Inside was a single page that started with 4 words nobody expects from a person like her. I am not okay. It was from Karen. She wrote that losing the gavel felt like losing gravity. That she'd built her days around the binder the way some folks build around a job title or a uniform. I thought I was protecting something. She wrote, "Turns out I was protecting the feeling of being needed." She said the power made her brave in dumb ways and fearful in smart ones. I wanted to be respected. She said. I ended up being avoided. Then this line. Ink a shade darker, where she pressed too hard. I am sorry. I sat with the letter on the porch. Wind lifting the corner. Jenna read it and squeezed my shoulder. You gonna write back, she asked. Yeah, I said. Not to fix it. Just to be human. I wrote that accountability and apology can hold hands. I wrote that she did harm as a choice, not an accident, and that choices had consequences that weren't up to me to erase. I wrote that neighbors are still neighbors, even when they mess up in loud ways. I wrote that if she wanted to drop off a casserole in the little free freezer during the holiday food drive, she could. No name tag needed. She never wrote again. But on the first cold snap of winter, a foil pan of lasagna appeared with a sticky note, for whoever needs dinner. Please heat all the way through. No signature. No crown. Midwinter brings tests. Not the dramatic ones with sirens. The small, sneaky ones, like the rumor that the board was plotting secret cameras by the mail kiosk. The old neighborhood would have gone to war in the group chat. The new one sent Maya and Hector to the kiosk with a thermos and a sign reading. We heard you. Let's talk. Turns out, a raccoon was pilfering packages. Someone suggested a game cam. Someone else heard camera and thought spying. By the time the thermos ran dry, they'd settled on a simple fix, a motion light. A big friendly sign that said smile. Neighbor critter cam this way. And a schedule of volunteers to pick up packages for folks who couldn't get home before dark. The raccoon, affronted by community engagement, retired to a different hobby. Then came the developer. There's always a developer. Like winter always comes. A firm bought a vacant lot at the edge of Lake Willow and sent glossy mailers about modern townhomes and efficient density. Most of us could live with that. Growth ain't a sin. But buried on page 5 of their proposal was a little ambush, a plan to privatize the main road with a gate for enhanced security. Plus, a clause that would let the developer appoint board seats during build-out. Old Lake Willow might have missed it. New Lake Willow did not. We packed the clubhouse. Not with pitchforks, okay? Maybe figurative ones, but with pens and highlighters. The city planner sat at a folding table like a referee at a small boxing match. The developer's rep gave a polished slideshow with phrases that tried to hypnotize us: traffic calming, curated access, integrated governance. Paula raised her hand and said, "Say gate if you mean gate." He smiled too big. "Gate," he said. "Hard no." Al grunted from the back, arms crossed like a bridge. "We ain't sorry. We are not becoming a checkpoint." I took the mic. "Public roads are the public's," I said. "Gates change who gets to feel welcome. They also change who gets to get out in a hurry when a hurricane decides to visit." The planner nodded. "Emergency access is a real concern." We asked questions until the rep's smile turned thin. Who maintains? Who pays? Who decides? Who guarantees their appointed board seats won't steamroll the community we rebuilt? There was a lot of, "We'll get back to you." We asked for everything in writing. We insisted on a public hearing. We posted the docs so folks could read them in slippers with a cup of tea. Not just in a hall under fluorescent buzz. When the hearing came, the city hall chambers filled with the usual mix suits. Hoodies. Clipboards. Lanyards. Hector brought the stroller and a list of statements neighbors wrote but were too shy to read. He read them with respect. Like prayers. "A gate won't make my daughter safer. Knowing my neighbors will. Please don't let a corporation appoint people to tell me how to live in the house I mortgage. Security is not a gate. It's a community." The council voted down the gate and the appointment clause. The developer huffed. Then adjusted. They'll build without a gate. We'll be fine without their appointees. On the walk back to our cars, Maya laughed into her scarf. You know, she said, I used to think civic engagement was just a term on a flyer. She nudged my arm. Now it's my Thursday. Welcome to the party. I said, spring again. Grass pushed through the thaw like it had somewhere to be. The good neighbor clause, which looked corny on paper, started to look like the spine we always needed. I got a call from a man named Stuart, who lived around the bend. His voice had that tremble people get when they've been dreading making the call. Chief, I got a notice, he said. Says my shed is non-compliant by a hair. You could hear the shame. Like he'd failed a test at school. I'll swing by, I said. When I got there, I found a shed painted 2 shades off the approved palette and said, no joke, a palm's width over the setback. Old board would have fired off a fine that stung. I knocked, said hi, and asked what was up. He rubbed his neck. My wife's treatment, he said. Eyes shiny. I built it fast to clear space inside. I thought I measured right. I didn't. Okay, I said. Let's fix it. We called Al. He showed with a level and that porch step grin. Paula arrived with muffins because Paula thinks anything hard is easier with carbs. We moved the shed a foot, which is to say, we moved a mountain 1 inch at a time. Hector re-rolled the paint so it matched the palette like a handshake. The notice got voided. The shame evaporated under the sun like morning dew. Stuart cried on my shoulder. Just for a heartbeat. And then he laughed like a tire, finally catching traction. Y'all saved me, he said. Nah, I replied. We just did neighbor math. Many hands. Light work. The next newsletter's small wins box didn't name him. It said, a shed scooted. A burden lifted. We were not perfect. A board volunteer left a snippy note on a porch about a wreath that clashed with the season. The group chat clapped back. Gentle, but firm. We don't do snippy. Maya posted. Use the template. Use your smile voice when you write. The volunteer apologized. Then brought flowers that actually matched the season. Growth isn't a straight line. It's a vine that remembers which way the sun is. Summer brought the pool, which brings the same 3 debates every year: chair saving, splash radius, and adults only hour. We solved the chairs with a towels off after 15 minutes rule and a cute sign drawn by a kid who drew towels like they were capes. Splash radius got settled by designating a cannonball corner and a no splash zone, where people read novels and pretend they're at a spa. The adults only hour. We renamed it Quiet Hour. Because teenagers crave quiet too sometimes. Even if they don't admit it. The lifeguards' college kids, with whistles and sunscreen stripes, enforced it with humor and a laminated cartoon of a seagull going, shh. One humid night, lights flickered on the path around the lake. I met the maintenance crew halfway. Flashlights, bobbing like fireflies. We replaced bulbs. Then we replaced the sign at the trailhead that used to say, "Park closes at dusk," with one that said, "Trail closes when the stars yawn. Be kind to the dark." Cheesy. Yeah. Effective. Surprisingly, the best meeting that summer was one where nothing went wrong. We gathered for budget night with a projector that worked on the first try miracle and a spreadsheet that didn't make your eyes scream. We used big fonts. We said, Here's the real cost of trash pickup and the dream cost of a shade sale for the playground. People voted money toward the sale. We ordered it in a color called Sunrise, which is marketing for warm yellow. Mr. Jenkins called it egg yolk and declared it perfect. After budget night, a neighbor who never speaks at microphones slipped me a note. It read, "I stayed. I watched. I felt safe. Thank you." I tucked it behind my badge for a week. Not because I needed thanks, but because reminders feed tired days. Let me tell you about the kid with the chalk. Her name's Tasha. She draws the world the way kids do, bigger than life, and twice as bright. One morning, she chalked a dragon across the cul-de-sac, wings spread. Eyes, kind. Claws, tucked so nobody would trip. An email came in before lunch. Graffiti. The sender kept it polite, but I could hear the fear behind the period. Fear that one dragon equals 1,000 tags equals a neighborhood going downhill. Old Lake Willow would have scrubbed the dragon under a sun that didn't approve. New Lake Willow texted Tasha's mom, "When's the party?" That afternoon, we turned chalk into an event, Dragons and Daisies Day. Kids covered the asphalt in a riot of color. Grown-ups drew too. Badly. Joyfully. The email sender came by with a broom, and after watching, the kids didn't use it. The dragon stayed until the next rain, reminding us that some beauty is supposed to be temporary. During cleanup, Tasha tugged my sleeve. "Can rules be fun?" she asked. "Serious, as a judge. They can be clear," I said. "And clear can feel like fun." She nodded so hard her ponytail tried to escape. A week later, a different kind of email, a complaint that someone was playing music after quiet hour. It was a cellist on a back porch, bow moving like a slow river. Instead of a warning, Paula wrote, "This is beautiful. Could you rap by 9? Also, would you play at the garden potluck?" The cellist blushed the next time I saw her. "I didn't know anyone could hear," she said. Mortified. "Good sound travels," I said. "So does kindness." We did hit a snag with short-term rentals. A home listed online drew a bachelorette party that forgot walls exist. Laughter is great. Screaming at midnight is less great. The rule we'd written, minimum stays. Caps. Hotline on the fridge got tested. The hotline rang. I answered. This is the fun police." I yoked. And the caller laughed. Then cried. Then apologized so hard, it was like doing push-ups. We moved them to the cannonball corner of the pool the next day so they could be loud in the right place. They brought cupcakes to the garden as amends. The rule held. So did our patience. Midsummer. The county fair hosted a booth for neighborhood best practices. Maya made a trifold board with pictures of our listening bench, our small wins, our Know Your Lines workshop schedule. We called it How to Not Be a Nuisance with a Clipboard, which made the clerk raise an eyebrow and then give us a ribbon for most useful title. Al stood by the post hole photo and told anyone who would listen about moving a shed with 4 neighbors and a prayer. Tasha drew a chalk dragon coiled around the base of the table. Folks from other neighborhoods took pictures, like tourists. One man snapped me a salute. "Y'all crack something open," he said. In a good way. Late August. Heat sticking to our skin like an extra t-shirt. The unexpected happened. The 2 men from my porch, those contractors, showed up at the community garden. Not sneaking. Not skulking. Holding shovels. Looking like they'd practiced how to stand without taking up too much space. Al noticed first. He stiffened. Then relaxed. then approached with the careful grace of a man who's learned both mercy and caution. "You lost?" he asked. Not unkind. The taller one cleared his throat. "We heard you needed muscle to move compost." He looked past Al to me. "We also, heard there's a path to be better neighbors. Silence isn't always an absence. Sometimes it's a bridge you decide to step on." Paula broke it by handing them gloves. "You know how to shovel without hurting your back?" she asked. "Bend your knees. Take it slow. We ain't in a race." We worked under the sun. A rhythm old as dirt. Scoop. Lift. Dump. The air smelled like earth and forgiveness. The short one glanced at me a few times, like he expected a siren. I kept my eyes on the pile, on the worms doing their holy work. After an hour, the taller one exhaled the sentence he'd been carrying. "We were idiots," he said. "And cowards. Both can be true." I said. "So can change." They came back the next Saturday. They helped move mulch. The Saturday after that, they hauled gravel. After a month, nobody flinched when they arrived. Trust didn't come back. It arrived, brand new, still in the box. And we opened it carefully. That's not absolution. It's community deciding where to point its second chances. Paula started writing a thing she called the Neighbor Manual. Not rules, but rituals. How to leave a casserole. How to welcome a new baby without scaring the new parents. How to complain without making the other person feel like a criminal. It read like a hymn. If hymns had recipe cards and doodles. The first page said, "Start with the assumption the person in front of you had a hard day." She asked me to write the chapter on lines. I scribbled, "The law is a roof. Private rules are furniture. Both matter. One keeps the rain out. The other makes the place livable. If your couch leaks, don't blame the roof. If your roof leaks, don't move the couch. Too much." Metaphor, I asked. She grinned. "Just enough." One evening in early fall, a thunderstorm rolled in hot and fast. Lightning snapped. Thunder cracked. Power flickered. Then went. The neighborhood lit itself anyway. Porch lights on battery packs. Flashlights in windows. Candles in jars. Folks checked on elderly neighbors and texted updates. The cellist played by candlelight. Soft notes that made the storm feel like background music instead of danger. When the power returned, a cheer rolled down the street like a wave. We didn't need a gavel to call the meeting to order. We didn't need a badge to make ourselves safe. We had each other. Which ain't poetry, it's plumbing. It keeps the water moving. As the year bent toward its close, Jenna and I hosted a potluck on the lawn. People brought what they had. A pot of chili that tasted like a hug. A salad that looked like a garden in a bowl. A pie that didn't set right and still disappeared. Mr. Jenkins told the same joke he always tells. And we laughed, because tradition is a kind of glue. Someone set an old shoebox on the table. Lid flipped back. A Sharpie nearby. The hand-lettered sign said, "Tell us a neighbor thing that made your year better." People wrote. Hector fixed the closet latch. Maya's emails don't make me sweat. Al moved a shed. Tasha's dragon reminded me to play. The cellist turned my bad day into a movie scene. Paula's basil saved my sad pasta. A pair of men shoveled like they meant it. The chief used his quiet voice. Near the end, I wrote my own card. A neighborhood learned to breathe. I ain't naive. Trouble returns. People forget. Power sneaks in through helpful, like a cat slipping past your leg. But we built habits. We built muscle. We wrote a manual that isn't binding, but binds us to the best parts of ourselves. So, if, someday, someone knocks with a shiny laminate and a tone that tries to shrink your house around you, you'll know what to do. Ask questions. Keep the tape running. Call the real help. Don't let fear rent space in your head. And when the storm passes, and it will plant tomatoes, move a shed, sit on the listening bench, and tell the next person how you got through. Because, friend, yeah, there's people who will try to turn a neighborhood into a kingdom. And there's us, with rakes and recipes and a roof we share, saying no, thanks. We prefer the messy miracle where everyone belongs. Anyone else had a board blur the line and then learned how to unblur it together. What's one neighbor thing that saved your year? Autumn crept in like a friendly cat, soft paws. Cooler evenings. The smell of leaves taking their bow. The board decided to host a fall walkabout instead of a formal meeting, neighbors wandering from porch to porch. Cider, steam, curling from paper cups. A clipboard only for recipe swaps. It was Jenna's idea to hang little lanterns along the sidewalk. Maya added, "Please keep the path clear," in handwriting that looked like a smile. Halfway through the evening, a new couple arrived, the Murrays. Fresh from a neighborhood across town that, by the sound of it, had been run like a tiny dictatorship. He wore suspicion like a jacket. She scanned the scene as if checking for exits. I recognized the look. Folks who've been burned by a bad board don't trust clipboards for a long while. Their daughter, a shy kid with bangs in her eyes, clutched a bag of candy corn like it was a passport. Paula glided over with her pie server raised like a wand. "Apple?" she asked. The girl took a slice. Eyes wide. The dad said, "We got a letter already? About our porch skeleton." Maya, who could hear letter from half a block, popped in. "Write the friendly kind," she said. "Not a fine. Just the note about lights off by 10. And please no jump scare motion sensors, 'cause Mr. Jenkins almost threw his back out last year." The dad's shoulders dropped a fraction. "No jump scare," he said. "Promise. Your skeleton's good." Paula added, "He's got personality." The mom exhaled. A held breath, finally let go. "Our old place," she muttered. "They ticketed us for a pumpkin that wasn't seasonally neutral." She actually used air quotes. Like, what is that even? Here it means, don't plug your fog machine into the neighbor's outlet. I said, otherwise, go nuts. But quiet by 10. I slipped and said the number, like a cop. Sorry by 10 o'clock. I corrected, grinning. As the sun dropped, the kids did a mini parade, capes flapping, plastic swords sheathed, painted faces already smudged. A little boy tripped, fell, and popped up giggling, which made every adult present age backward for a heartbeat. The new dad, still hovering at cautious, looked around like he was daring himself to relax. He caught my eye. "So, there's no, enforcement squad. Only if you count Paula's Pie Patrol." I said, "She'll cite you for not taking seconds." He laughed, then coughed, then laughed for real. The mom squeezed his hand. The kid with the bangs found Tasha, and within minutes they were drawing chalk leaves that looked like stained glass. Trust doesn't toe dip. It learns by cannonball. October rolled into late month, and decorations multiplied like happy weeds. A house on Maple put up a life-size witch. A toddler hugged it daily. which felt like a sermon about fear and what you do with it. One neighbor went a little too realistic with a zombie hand on the mailbox. We wrote a note, looks great, but maybe less gore near the bus stop. He swapped it for a goofy ghost with a tongue sticking out. That tongue wagged like peace. We did get one email. The subject line said, concern, which is community speak for complaint with manners. A resident felt the yard displays were teaching children to love darkness. Maya, quick and kind, wrote back, totally hear you. We keep sound low, lights off by 10 o'clock. And we encourage balance. Come by for the pumpkin hymn sing on Sunday. The resident came. They didn't sing, but they hummed. Call that a win. Legal stuff has a way of lingering in the corners like cobwebs you think you got, and then bam, there it is again. After Karen's case wrapped, public records did what public records do. They existed. A local blogger posted the charging documents and the plea agreements of the two porch contractors. The comments section tried to dox. The old neighborhood might have passed around screenshots like snacks. The new one didn't. Maya posted a one-paragraph reminder on the bulletin: we don't pile on. We don't stalk. We don't relive what's over. If you have questions about safety or law, ask Mike. If you have feelings, bring them to the listening bench or the garden, and we'll weed together. The was exactly right, gentle. Human. The thread turned from torches to tea. People wrote about their own moments of overreach when they'd used a rule to win instead of to help. That confessional tone changed the room. A rumor popped that Karen was moving back to town. Turned out to be false. Even if it had been true, the policy we'd set mattered more than where anyone parked their regret. Accountability had done its work. We didn't need rehearsals. On a Tuesday, the county clerk called. We're refreshing our HOA guidance flyer, she said. Would you review it? I expected boilerplate. What arrived was refreshingly plain. Private covenants can set standards for aesthetics, maintenance, and shared amenities. They cannot supplant law enforcement. They cannot detain. They cannot search. If someone claims police powers, call actual police. I circled cannot like a kid. I sent back only tiny edits. Add appeal rights must be clear and tone matters. The clerk laughed. We don't usually have tone on government flyers. Maybe we should, I said. It saves calls. Al dropped off a stack at the clubhouse. Folks took them like recipes. Clarity's a comfort food. On a bright cold morning in November. The kind where the air tastes clean and the sun disguises the chill. Mr. Jenkins didn't come out for his paper. That wouldn't be news except he always does. Rain or shine. Robe or trousers. With a salute to the daylight. Paula noticed at 8. By 8:30. She'd texted me. By 8:40. I was knocking. And by 8:42. I was using the spare key he gave me in case I forget my own name. As he joked. He was on the kitchen floor. Color wrong. Breath shallow. Training landed where panic could have. I checked. I called. I started compressions. Counting, steady. Numbers in my head, like a metronome. Even though, yeah, I know we write out numbers around here. My brain still clicks in measures. Jenna brought the AED from the clubhouse. Maya flagged down the ambulance with a scarf like a signal flag. Al kept the walkway clear. The cellist prayed softly. Notes without a bow. The paramedics arrived with grace and speed, and professional calm that makes you want to bake them a cake. They took over. Machines sang their cold, necessary song. They got a rhythm back. They moved Mr. Jenkins with the dignity of men carrying a grandfather. The ambulance doors closed. The sirens said, what sirens say, move. World. Someone's life is asking. We followed to the hospital in a caravan of worry. Hours later, a doctor with kind eyes and a coffee stain on his cuff came to the waiting area. He's stable, he said. He needs time. You did right. We spilled relief across the chairs like water. Paula cried into a napkin that had once been a list for groceries. Al stared at his hands as if new to them. I felt shaky in that late way, the tremor you get when the wolf is back in the woods. The next newsletter's small wins was a list of names. Neighbors who fetched, who flagged, who carried, who pressed, who prayed. We added AED training at the clubhouse. Saturday morning, 40 people showed. We practiced on mannequins that didn't judge our form. We laughed at ourselves for counting too fast. We wrote the location of both AEDs in big letters, in the clubhouse foyer and by the pool gate. Plus Paula's got the code if the door's locked, which was only half a joke. A week later, Mr. Jenkins came home to a sidewalk chalk parade that would have embarrassed a lesser man. He pretended to shoo us and then let himself be loved. He hugged me longer than usual. You kept the beat, he said into my shoulder. Sometimes that's all it takes. He patted my cheek and added, with that gravel velvet, tell your training officer to buy more practice dummies. The shed fire wasn't dramatic, thank God. A spark from a power strip. A small ribbon of smoke. A quick call. It could have been bad. It wasn't. Because someone noticed the curl and someone else had a hose, and the fire trucks got there with the kind of brisk that comforts you. Still, the scorch on the siding looked like a bruise, and the smell stuck to the back of your throat. The owner, a gentle tinkerer named Drew, stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at the black patch like he owed it money. My fault, he said. Too many plugs in one thing. The old board would have slapped a notice and puffed. The new board made a list. We scheduled a shed safety Saturday with the fire department. They brought a trailer that showed what happens with and without a door closed. A tiny education in smoke and time. Kids watched with big eyes. Grown-ups watched like people remembering their garages. The firefighters spoke plain, don't overload. Watch the heaters. Keep gas cans away from sparks. Use strips with real fuses. Not the cheap ones. They joked. They charmed. They taught. We fed them hot dogs and respect. Then we updated our guidelines, not as scolds, but as partners. We asked that any outlets in sheds be GFCI. Cords rated for the load. Heat sources kept clear. Free inspections offered by Hector on Saturdays. He's licensed. And if he can't fix it, he'll tell you who can. If you need a strip, buy the good one. We've got a discount code. Drew replaced his power strip. And he posted a photo with a caption that read, I did a dumb. Now I did it right. The thread filled with same and thanks instead of shame. Not long after, a different kind of fire, political, not literal, flared outside our little grid of streets. The state held a hearing on homeowner associations and the scope of private governance. I got an email from a legislative aide who'd heard about the porch situation. Would I testify? My first instinct was, no, I don't like microphones that turn your pulse into sound. But I thought of that library room. Those faces with stories. The clerk's flyer. The way rumor rings loud when truth whispers. I said yes, with a caveat. I'd tell a story. Not propose a law. I'm not a legislator. I'm a neighbor who wears a badge. The hearing room felt like a classroom for grown-ups who forgot how to play. Suits, laptops, water bottles with motivational stickers, a committee chair who spoke like an NPR host, and a vice chair who looked at his watch like it owed him minutes. I sat, swore, told the porch story with the boring parts intact, the emails, the quotes, the laws that already exist. The moment fake crossed into felony, I said. The fix is partly legal and partly cultural. The law already says you can't pretend to be a cop. Maybe add teeth for folks who commission the pretending. But mostly teach boards the difference between compliance and control. Give buyers a one-page rights document they actually read. Tell them where to appeal that isn't the person who wrote the ticket. A lobbyist for a management company followed me. She described chronic violators and the necessity of strong enforcement mechanisms. The words marched like a parade of bricks. A pastor spoke next about mercy and fences and why people fight over hedges when they're really fighting about feeling seen. Then, a woman I didn't know stood up. Hands trembling. Voice steady. I got fined for a ramp. She said. They said it wasn't pretty. I said, it wasn't meant to be pretty. It was meant to get my husband into our home. The room shifted. You could feel it the way truth tilts a floor. The committee asked questions that weren't all grandstanding. A member with a bow tie asked, how do we prevent impersonation without making boards afraid to enforce basic standards? I said. Make impersonation expensive and standards human. Write it down. Train volunteers. Use templates with soft words and clear steps. Remind people, call the police for danger. Not for Christmas lights. Another asked, is there a role for the state guidance? I said, model bylaws. Clear due process. Funding for mediators who can sit on fences without falling. They laughed. Good. Laughter keeps a room honest. After, in the hallway that smelled like old carpet and ambition, a man in a blazer stopped me. I argued online that HOAs should be abolished. He said, now I think they should be taught. I shrugged. Both sound nice on a sign. Teaching works better by Tuesday. Weeks later, the committee issued a report. It didn't rewrite the world. It did two quiet things. Recommended a mandatory one-page homeowner rights sheet at closing, and funded a free training module for boards that included a whole section titled, in blessedly large font, what you absolutely cannot do. It wasn't a revolution. It was a screwdriver handed to a wobbly chair. Back home, we printed the rights sheet and put it in the clubhouse next to the pool key sign-out. We added our neighbor manual beside it. They make a funny pair, the state's voice saying cannot, and our voice saying how. Between them, a neighborhood. Winter again. This time, kinder. The cellist learned a carol that made even the cynics stop at the end of their driveways. The garden slept under straw. The listening bench looked lonely with its plaque catching frost. So Maya knitted a goofy scarf. Someone stole the scarf. Someone else replaced it with a tacky tinsel garland. We decided the bench could wear whatever the season felt like. One evening, with the sky bruised purple and smoke curling from chimneys, my phone rang. The mayor. You ever think about what's next? She asked. That sounds like a setup. I said, smiling into the dark. I'm gonna retire at some point. She said, our city will need a public safety director. Someone who knows the difference between policy and people. I paced the porch boards until they squeaked. You're asking me to trade a badge for a binder? I said. Binders aren't bad. She teased. Depends who's holding it. I told Jenna on the couch. Our knees touching under a blanket like teenagers. She squeezed my hand. You'd be good at that, she said. You're already doing it. Just with more sirens. I stared at the ceiling. At the spider in the corner who'd chosen our living room for winter. I'm scared of becoming the thing I fought, I admitted. A binder king. She grinned. We'll make you a crown out of zip ties, she said. To remind you what not to be. I snorted. Deal. By spring, I made a choice. I announced I'd step down as chief at the end of summer. The department surprised me with a party that made me hide in the hallway twice to regroup. There were speeches that used verbs in past tense that made my stomach lurch. Served. Led. Protected. There were also dumb jokes. Bad cake. And a photo board of me across the years. Hair thinner. Smile deeper. The mayor offered the job officially. I took it. My badge felt lighter in my palm. Heavier in my pocket. Lake Willow threw a different kind of party. Bring a chair and a memory night. People told stories that made me cry into a napkin I pretended was itchy. Remember when he chased my dog for like an hour? Remember when he fixed the stop sign with duct tape and attitude until Public Works came? Remember when he used his quiet voice on those two guys and the whole street felt the earth tilt? When the sun slid down. I climbed onto the little stage and cleared my throat. I ain't leaving, I said. And the crowd laughed. I'm trading one kind of tool for another. If you see me with a binder, smack it out of my hands. Paula lifted her pie server. Consider me armed. We voted in a new chief, a good one. Steady as a lighthouse. I started Mondays in a different building with worse coffee and more meetings. It's work, not storybook. And some days, I miss the radio crackle, like missing a song you forgot the name of. But then I sit in a room where people argue policies with their teeth bared. And I say, what's the human here? And sometimes, the room remembers. At home, the neighborhood kept being itself a messy miracle held together by casseroles, commas, and the occasional council meeting. The neighbor manual got a new chapter, written by Hector, how to borrow a ladder and return it like a gentleman. Rule 1, wipe the paint off. Rule 2, if you break it, buy a nicer one. Rule 3, say thanks with cookies. Not a law, but binding in the ways that matter. Karen never came back. Once in a while, a letter shows up in Paula's garden mailbox. No return address. $5 bills tucked inside for seeds. The handwriting looks familiar. The notes say things like, the purple ones were pretty last year. Paula plants extra purple. A newcomer named Sunita started a book swap night. The first pick was a novel about a small town that eats its own and then spits out something kinder. We sat in the clubhouse, knees touching under card tables, arguing gently about plot and people. Someone asked, do we forgive the villain? Someone else said, we forgive the neighbor. That felt right. One sleepy Sunday, I walked the loop around the lake with Mr. Jenkins. His cane tapping time. You done good, son, he said, which is what he calls half the human race. You done neighbor work. He pointed at the swing set. You and them. He pointed at the garden. You and her. He pointed at the bench. You and all of us. We paused by the signboard. Tasha had drawn a chalk crown with a big X through it, and under it, a smiley face, wearing a beanie. No queens. She'd written, Only neighbors. The chalk was fading. The way chalk does. The truth was not. "Tell me again," he said, a little breathless from the walk. "What's the rule that matters?" "The law is the roof," I recited, like a bedtime rhyme. "The rules are the furniture. Both matter. One keeps the rain out. The other makes the place livable. And neighbors make it home." He patted my arm. "There it is. If this is starting to sound like a Hallmark reel, lemme." Said it crooked again. Because real never stays neat. A spring election brought a slate of candidates, one of whom Terry ran on bringing back order. He used phrases like crackdown and slippery slope, and we're losing control. He wasn't a villain. He was scared. Fear makes rules sound like shields. At the forum, he asked for 2 minutes and took 5. "We used to have standards," he said. "Now we have chalk dragons." He actually gestured at Tasha, who stared at her shoes. My chest tightened. Maya spoke next. Voice calm as a pond. "We still have standards, Terry. They're just written in English and enforced like neighbors. Not hall monitors," Paula added. "And the dragons leave when it rains." Laughter loosened the room. Terry flushed, then doubled down. "If we don't stop the small things, the big things come." He meant blight. He meant chaos. He meant losing a picture he loved. "Come walk with me," I said. Mid-forum. Spontaneous. We stepped outside into the gold hour. We walked past the garden. The swing set. The bench with tinsel from December still caught in the slats. We passed a trash can at the curb. Lid on. Lined with a bungee cord. A trick Hector taught us that kept raccoons from having raves. We passed a house with one shutter chip. Nobody had noticed because the yard was full of people laughing. "Where's the chaos?" I asked. He stared at the chipped shutter. "Right there," he said. "Today a chip. Tomorrow a missing shutter. Next week a couch on the lawn." I nodded. "I get that slope. I live on slopes. My job, for years, was to spot them before folks slid. But look around when there's community. Slopes have guardrails. If a shutter falls, Al and the teenagers will bring a ladder and a sandwich. If a couch shows up, Maya will text, 'Need help hauling,' before you can say couch." He looked unconvinced, but quieter. I don't want to lose what makes this place special." "Me neither," I said. "That's why we made rules that people can follow without feeling small." I paused. "What do you actually want to fix? Name one thing." "Not a feeling. A thing." He chewed on that. "Weeds at the entrance sign," he admitted. "Bugs me every time I drive in." "Great," I said. "You just joined the sign squad." Election night. The clubhouse filled with the usual buzzy cocktail of hope and dread. The results weren't a landslide. They rarely are. Terry won a seat by a handful of votes. Maya and Paula kept theirs. A new neighbor, Sunita, won too. Eyes bright at the edges, hands steady at the core. It was a good mix, order and joy, caution and play. At the first meeting, Terry arrived with a binder labeled Objectives. The room tensed. He opened it to a list with checkboxes, not fines, not punishments. Entrance weeds. It read, Mailbox paint touch-up day. Shade sale maintenance. He looked at us. Sheepish. I made a list, he said. I can make lists, he added. Get her. Welcome to the party. Maya said. We spent an hour assigning volunteers. We spent 10 minutes eating brownies. We adjourned with more hugs than arguments. The dragon drawing on the signboard wore sunglasses that week. Terry helped chalk them in. The Know Your Lines workshop became a traveling show. The city posted dates. I started as the speaker. But then Paula took a night. Then Hector. Then the cellist who spoke about quiet hours and art and how respect is a volume knob. We added a role play. One person plays a board member. One plays a neighbor. One plays a raccoon. The raccoon always gets laughs. The raccoon also teaches something: mischief looks different when you name it right. At a session across town, a man raised his hand. What if my board president is also a police officer, he asked. Wary. I chose words like carefully stacked plates. Most officers I know understand lines better than most people. I said, if they forget, remind them that badges come off at home. If you're scared, call internal affairs or your neighbor who bakes too much. Both are good at telling truth. He whispered after. It's my brother. I squeezed his shoulder. Families are where governance gets tender. In late spring, the developer broke ground on the townhomes without a gate. And you know what? The sky didn't fall. The trucks were loud at civilized hours. The workers parked where we asked. A couple of guys ate lunch at the garden bench. Heads down, grateful for shade. We left cold water on a table with a sign, for you. Thank you. One worker raised his bottle and said, no one ever does this. Sunita replied, we do now. By summer, new neighbors moved in. One knocked on my door with cookies and a question. Who's Karen? I blinked. Time is humbling. Someone who taught us a lot. I said, what kind of cookies are those? He grinned. Chocolate chip with too much chocolate. There's no such thing. I said. We swapped recipes and stories. His toddler hid behind his leg, peeking at me like I was a cartoon character that just stepped off the screen. I made a silly face. The toddler squealed. I felt, for a second, like a magician. A postcard arrived from an out-of-state address with a picture of a lighthouse. The back said, gardens look good in purple. Keep the lantern lit. No signature. Sometimes closure wears a stamp. On a night in late summer, the air soft and the cicadas running their engine hum. Tasha, older now by inches and confidence, asked for the mic at the potluck. I want to start a youth council, she announced. Cheeks flushed, but eyes fierce. Not to be cute, but to help. We can run chalk days. Read to little kids at the bench. Write the quiet hour sign with better drawings. We voted. Unanimous. The next week, the youth council met in the clubhouse corner. Markers squeaking. Snacks vanishing. Ideas flying. They proposed library forts for rainy days and a boredom hotline you could text for an instant idea. Bake cookies and share 3. Write a kind note. Anonymous allowed. Ask Mr. Jenkins for a joke. The hotline number went on the signboard. It got used more than I expected. Boredom, it turns out, is an early warning sign for lonely. The kids treated it like a fire they knew how to douse. Years stack quietly. You look up, and the toddlers are on bikes without training wheels, and Mr. Jenkins tells his jokes slower, but laughs harder at his own punchline. I walked the loop one evening, thinking about roofs and furniture and all the dumb fights we didn't have because we chose to talk first. A pair of plastic zip ties left over from a garden trellis project sat on the picnic table next to a sign the youth council had drawn, for crafts only. The letters wobbled. The truth held. A car I didn't know pulled up. A woman got out midlife. Sharp suit. Tired eyes. She looked at the bench like it was a confession booth. I sat. Left space. Waited. I'm the new president at Oak Bend. She said. I inherited a mess. She rubbed the heel of her hand against her sternum like breathing hurt. People hate us. Maybe for good reason. I don't want that anymore. I nodded. You don't fix it in a week. I said. You do it in Saturdays. Put out the folding chairs. Change your letters to "Hey, neighbor." Make your fines last. Use actual names. Bake cookies. I know that sounds silly. She laughed. Then hiccuped. Then sighed. You really think cookies help? I think cookies give conversations somewhere to sit. I said. She stayed for an hour. She left with the neighbor manual and a Tupperware of something Paula baked that tasted like a good idea. A month later, a photo showed up in our thread, Oak Bend's signboard with a chalk crown crossed out. Beneath it, only neighbors. The handwriting different. The heartbeat the same. I don't know if this is an ending. Stories like this don't really end. They settle into a rhythm you can dance to or ignore. And either way, the song's still there. I do know this every time I hear the word enforcement now. A part of me checks for the quiet voice before the loud one. Every time I see a clipboard, I look for the pie server standing right behind it. And every time a new family rolls in with a U-Haul and hopeful eyes, I think, welcome to the messy miracle. If you're listening from a kitchen table with a scary envelope on it, if your porch has felt smaller because two strangers tried to make it a courtroom, if your binder got heavy and you forgot it's supposed to hold furniture, not crowns, hey, we've been there. You can redraw the line. It's slower than rage and stickier than shame and better than both. What would you do right now? This week, to make your place less like a kingdom and more like a block party? Who's your Paula with the pies? Your Maya with the emails? Your Al with the post-hole digger? Your Tasha with the chalk? Call them. Write something in plain words. Bring brownies. Be brave in small ways. It adds up. It always does. Neighbors fix what bullies break. And when they forget, other neighbors remind them. That's the rule I'll write on the inside of my hat, if I ever get one. Anyone else feel that tug? That let's set the chairs out tug? Tell me what you'd do first. Or, tell me about the best chalk dragon you ever saw. Early spring brought a holiday. I didn't grow up with Diwali, thanks to Sunita's parents visiting for a month with suitcases full of spices and stories. She asked if she could hang lanterns on her porch and set small clay lamps on the walkway. The kind that glow like warm stars on the ground. No fireworks, she said quickly, reading the rule before anyone else could. Just light. The old board would have squinted at the unfamiliar and reached for the aesthetics binder. The new board reached for curiosity. Paula asked what the lamps meant. Sunita explained light, pushing back darkness. Good, pushing back, not good, she laughed and said, that's the kid version. Maya translated no fireworks into battery candles. Welcome. Open flames off by 10 o'clock. Close to the house. Watch the wind. Keep a water jug. Hector offered to test the outlets. The youth council said, Can we draw Rangoli with chalk? Sunita grinned so wide her eyes shone. Please. The night of Diwali. The street glowed in a new color. The clay lamps flickered like a choir of little moons. Kids crouched to draw bright patterns at the edge of the path flowers. Suns. A dragon that looked suspiciously like Tasha's, but with different eyelashes. Someone worried aloud about mess. Sunita waved it off. It's rice flour, she said. Birds eat art for breakfast. A neighbor who used to grumble about anything not in the monthly magazine calendar stood with his hands in his pockets, moved and unsure how to show it. Pretty, he said, finally, which is neighbor for, I feel something I didn't expect. Sunita's mother pressed a sweet into his palm. Eat, she commanded. He did. He closed his eyes like the sugar was a memory. Okay, he said. This should be a rule, more sweets. We wrote it on the signboard as a joke and kinda meant it. Someone sent an email marked concern about foreign displays. Maya, with patience the size of a football field, replied, we are a neighborhood, not a catalog. We keep sound low, safety high, and doors open. If you'd like to host a Lights and Carols night in December, we'll bring cocoa. The reply came back one sentence long. Cocoa sounds nice. Fear yields like ice in sun when you treat it with warmth. Not a blowtorch. We took photos, faces lit by lanterns. Chalk powder on knees. Lamps like constellations at our feet. The next day, kids pointed at rice flower birds pecking at patterns and cheered. The art left. The feeling stayed. That's the best kind of compliance, the kind that makes room. Not every note in a harmony is sweet at first. A smell started drifting up Birch in the early mornings, yeasty, warm, tempting. Turns out, a neighbor named Lourdes baked bread in her kitchen to sell at the farmer's market across town. She'd deliver extra loaves by bicycle to friends at dawn, ringing a tiny bell like a fairy tale. Then a complaint, commercial activity, bold font, big energy, signed concerned about slippery slopes. Old board would have slapped a fine and called it a day. The new board called a sit-down at the listening bench. Lourdes arrived with a basket of rolls and eyes that said both pride and fear. I'm careful, she said softly. No delivery vans. No signs. No strangers knocking. Just me and my bike and a couple of pre-dawn drop-offs for folks who ask. I reached for coffee that wasn't there and pretended it was. The worry, I said, is about traffic and noise and, turning houses into shops. Terry, now genuinely part of the team, nodded. But also, he added, surprising himself. The worry should include losing something good if we overreact. We pulled the covenants. No storefronts, they said. No heavy traffic. Nothing about bread at sunrise. Hector suggested a cap, no more than a handful of regular deliveries. All by foot or bike. Hours kinda sleep. Maya wrote it in plain words. Home-based work that doesn't look or sound like a store is okay. If it gets big, take it to a proper commercial space. We'll cheer you on. Then we did a new thing. We made a porch market day once a month. Not a swap meet, free for all, just neighbors sharing what they make. Lourdes set out breads. A teenager sold handmade pet bandanas. Sunita's mother labeled spice mixes with Sharpie hearts. The cellist trio played 3 songs and a half song they were still learning adorable. A retired guy sharpened knives with a setup that looked like magic. We set hours late morning to early afternoon. Quiet by nap time. We made a rule about keeping sidewalks clear and money boxes honest. We wrote no generators and no amplified sound in letters big enough to make a point without shouting. Concerned about slippery slopes came by, tried a roll, and said, muffled by crust, "Okay. But no lemonade stands on Tuesdays, only Sundays." Paula deadpanned. We added lemonade stands any time, within reason. Especially when it's hot to a sticky note. Because why not? Around the time the azaleas declared victory over winter, the county sent out a preparedness bulletin. Hurricane season here has a way of turning neighbors into weather apps. You feel it in the grocery store, water shelf empty. Batteries gone. A line for propane that looks like a parade without floats. In my new job, public safety director. Binder, not crown, I get a view from farther back. It's equal parts planning, prayer, and reminding panicked people that they still need bread and kindness. I pitched the board on a neighborhood drill that wasn't corny. Call it storm practice. I said, keep it simple. Make it a Saturday morning with donuts. We made a map with block captains, volunteers with clipboards that did not turn into crowns cause we watched them. Each captain had a list of folks to check on: elders, single parents, people with medical needs, new neighbors who might not speak hurricane yet. We printed a one-page checklist: water, meds, batteries, pet plan, refill your gas, trim your trees, clean your gutters, clear drains. We added a line for talk to your neighbor about your plan. We put donuts at the clubhouse at 9 o'clock in big friendly letters because sugar greases gears. The drill day arrived under a sky that couldn't decide what to do. Captains knocked, introduced, jotted. We practiced texting okay and need to a group thread we promised to use only in emergencies. We hung a laminated, if the power's out, go here for updates. Sign on the clubhouse with arrows. The youth council drew. The fire department swung by with a truck. Let kids hop up. Answered questions about generators with the patience of saints. They stressed, never in a garage. Not even a little. Not even with the door open. They told a story that made us all vow to be boring in the best way. When the first real storm spun our way, we were boring and ready. People set out sandbags like a weird art project. We moved patio furniture without being asked. Block captains texted all okay and checking on Mr. Jenkins and Paula has spare candles. A limb came down. Nobody under it. The power flickered. The bench wore a poncho. The pond swelled but stayed polite. Afterwards, we grilled thawing stuff and ate on paper plates and told each other the truth fear's real. But so's muscle memory. A week later, a family 3 neighborhoods over lost their roof edge to wind. We packed a truck with tarps and screws and a cooler and showed up like cousins. They didn't know what to do with the help. We told them we used to be people who didn't know what to do either. That seemed to land. Harder than storms are the slow crises, the ones that smell like loneliness and look like a house whose blinds never lift. We got whispers about a place at the end of Willow, packages stacked, newspapers soggy, a lawn gone to seed. Violation, someone said. Hazard, someone else said. I went with person. We knocked. A voice from inside said, go away. Not angry, just tired in a bone-deep way. It's Mike, I said. Neighbor, can we talk through the door? A pause. A sigh, like a deflating tire. Fine. We learned enough to care more. The owner Ricky had fallen behind the world after losing a job and a parent in the same month. Depression's a mean roommate. It eats your lists and your light. He wasn't refusing the world. He was drowning quietly in it. Old board would have printed a list of fines and felt righteous. The new board made 2 lists, a to-do and a who's good at this. We called the county's outreach team, who can walk the line between help and dignity without tripping. We called a non-profit that sends people who understand hoarding as a symptom, not a sin. We made a plan with Ricky that respected not today and okay. Maybe Saturday. We brought yard tools, gloves, masks, patience, and pizza. It wasn't a television montage. It was slow, sweaty, and full of tiny victories. 1 bag out the door. 1 corner cleared. 1 laugh at a joke so bad it broke tension. We kept fines away like flies. We followed law where it mattered, safety checks. Pest control that didn't hurt his cat. A fire inspection that treated him like a person. Months later, the blinds went up. The mailbox flag wiggled. Ricky came to the listening bench one morning. Sat. Stared at his own hands like they were a new instrument. I didn't think you'd stick, he said. We did. I said. We're annoying like that. He snorted, and the sound felt like air in a stale room. We added a line to the neighbor manual. If you think a messy yard is a moral failing, you ain't looked long enough. Start with, hey, are you okay? The manual grew a spine without growing teeth. One rainy week, when even the squirrels looked bored, we held a How to Fight Fair night at the clubhouse. Call it mediation training. Call it group therapy with cookies, either way. It was full. A facilitator named Nora taught us the 3 chairs trick. 2 chairs for the 2 sides. A third for the problem. You talk to the problem, not each other. Sounds goofy. Works like a charm. We practiced with fake conflicts and a couple of real ones dressed as fake. Chair number 1. Paula said, pointing. Wants holiday lights up forever. Chair number 2. Terry said. Wants the sun to set on time. We put the problem in. Chair 3. How do we have cheer without glare? Solution spilled fast when nobody had to lose face to win peace. We also practiced the 1 breath rule before you answer. Take 1 slow breath. It makes your mouth kinder. It also makes your brain remember it's attached. We wrote, take 1 breath on a sticky note and slapped it on the gavel we barely used. Nora drew 2 circles on the whiteboard. Circle of what you can control, she said, shading it lightly. Circle of what you can't, shading the world. Most HOA drama lives in the shaded part, she said. Move it. We laughed. Then sighed. Then nodded, like group PT. Raccoon yolks came back. As they do. Nora pointed at me and said, Mike, give us the raccoon example. I said, if the problem is trash on Tuesday, don't arrest the raccoon. Bungee the can. Share the trick. Bake cookies for the neighbor who shares the trick. Repeat. The room clapped like I said something profound. Really, I just like bungees and cookies. We left with a toolbox that wasn't a binder. It had phrases like, help me understand. What would feel fair? What do you need to let this go? The youth council made a zine out of those lines. Photocopied in a wobbly font. Passed out like concert flyers. People put it on fridges, with magnets shaped like fruit. A hiccup arrived, disguised as an opportunity. A security company pitched us on community safety enhancements. Their brochure was glossy enough to be a mirror. It had photos of uniforms that looked this close to law enforcement, and a page about deterrence through presence. I felt my neck tighten like a seatbelt in a sudden stop. We asked them to present at a meeting. Partly because it's good to hear pitches. Partly because I wanted the teachable moment. They spoke in smooth paragraphs. We offer visibility. They said. We offer authority. I leaned into the mic. We don't buy authority. I said. We borrow it from each other. The sales rep smiled, too practiced. What about chronic violations? We have chairs and cookies. Maya said. And a manual. Al added. Proud. The rep pivoted to fear. What about crime? I didn't take the bait. We have a police department. I said. We have neighbors who notice. We have lights. Cameras, where consented. And a group chat that sends call 911 faster than a golf cart can make a lap. We thanked them and declined. We wrote a policy in big letters. No uniforms, badges, or vehicles that resemble law enforcement. Ever. Then we got specific. No shield shapes. No star patches. No words like patrol on golf carts. No silence. If you see something, call the real number. We added. And printed the non-emergency line on fridge magnets that looked like little houses. People stuck them on fridges, toolboxes, and one guy's guitar amp. The funniest aftermath was the youth council's poster, a cartoon raccoon in a security hat with a red X over it and a speech bubble. Friends don't let friends cosplay cops. It made the rounds online. Got 1,000 likes. And one grumpy comment we ignored politely. Terry, who once wanted a crackdown, stood up at the next meeting and said, I slept better knowing we didn't put a siren on a golf cart. Growth, is a weird, wonderful thing. The city called to ask if Lake Willow would host a neighborhood-to-neighborhood day, an open house for folks from other associations who wanted to see a place that turned a mess into a manual. We cleaned. But not too much. We left the chalk art on the path. We left the small winds board smudged with happy fingerprints. We brewed coffee strong enough to apologize for being in a metal urn. People came with notepads and skepticism. A man in a polo asked, How do you stop people from abusing leniency? I said. We don't do leniency. We do clarity with kindness. Big difference. A woman whispered. Our president uses her indoor voice on a megaphone. Maya showed her the template library, Hey Neighbor letters, for everything from trash cans to party noise to your rosemary is trying to escape. The woman took pictures of phrases like artifacts. Sunita led a festival without fireworks session. She showed how to use LED candles like magic and rice flour like a rainbow. Lourdes demoed porch market day with a basket that emptied itself. The cellist played a piece called Quiet Hour that made even Terry close his eyes and sigh. Hector taught a class called Ladders and Love, which is mostly about not falling and not pretending you don't need help. I did a short talk called The Roof and the Furniture. I pointed to the one-page write sheet and the manual and said, Roof. Couch. Someone asked, What about the porch with the zip ties? I nodded. Not dodging. We learned. I said. We drew a line with law and we painted it with neighbors. I recommend both coats. We handed out copies of the manual, stapled crooked on purpose, because perfection scares people. We sent folks home with rosemary cuttings, and a promise email us if you get stuck. They did. We wrote back. We're annoying like that. Life. Inevitably. Tried to poke our soft spots. A teenage prank brought toilet paper to trees in front of 3 houses. A silly white snow under streetlights in early fall. One of the houses belonged to a couple who'd moved from a stricter neighborhood. Nerves still frayed. Vandalism, they texted. We need cameras on every corner. We didn't. We needed ladders and laughter, and the youth council. They arrived with rakes, bagged the paper, and left a note in loopy handwriting. We got you. Welcome to a place where pranks turn into cleanup parties. Quiet by 10. Love. The kids. The couple came to the next meeting, cheeks pink, and admitted they'd never told a room they overreacted. We clapped like it was a recital. A different day. A truck rolled too fast down Maple, while a toddler wobbled on a scooter. Scary. Real. We took it seriously, without going full sheriff. We added 2 portable slowdown signs that looked like little green men holding flags. Cheesy. Effective. We asked the city for a speed trailer for a week. Those things that show your speed and shame you into tapping the brake. We posted slow is kind on the signboard. We added drive like your grandma naps here, as a joke that made people snort and, somehow, drive gently. A father wrote to say he cried a little behind his sunglasses when a car actually stopped at the crosswalk the second day. Thought that only happens in commercials. He typed. Or Vermont. We added to the manual, cross at corners. Wave thanks. Teach kids the dance of eye contact. Law makes lines. Manners make miracles. The mayor held a swearing-in for a new slate of city volunteers boards. Commissions. The folks who read plans and count trees, and argue about where benches go in parks. She asked me to say the last word. I wanted to decline. I'm better at porches than podiums. I said yes anyway. I wrote it on a napkin at the kitchen counter, while Jenna graded papers and the cat judged my penmanship. I told them about a crown made of zip ties we never made, and a bench with a scarf we didn't keep, and a dragon that vanished in rain on purpose. I said governance is just a fancy word for set out the chairs and listen. I said, if you're tempted to write a rule because you're scared, ask if you can host a conversation because you're brave. I said, the easiest way to keep from acting like a cop when you ain't one is to learn the phone number of the people who are. And then get really good at cookies. After the applause that felt like relief more than praise, a council member in an impeccable suit said, you're making my job sound like a block party. I grinned. On the good days. It is. Back at Lake Willow. The Youth Council launched the Boredom Hotline for real. They printed a flyer. Text the word bored for an idea. Ideas came back like fortunes. Pick up 5 pieces of trash. Draw a map of the neighborhood from memory. Write a thank you to the person who waved at you this week. Ask Mr. Jenkins for a story, and send us 3 words from it. The hotline got pinged a lot the first week. Then less. Then more again, when rain stretched into a sulk. A postcard arrived, addressed to the listening bench. The front showed a beach in winter, all gray and gorgeous. The back said, in block letters, light pushes back, no signature. We slid it under the bench's tinsel and let it live there. It happened quiet. An elderly neighbor named Miss Ruth stopped driving. No announcement. Just a car that didn't move a week. Then 2. She'd always been the type to send a pie and a note that said, don't you dare bring the dish back empty. Now her porch light clicked on later. Off earlier. Paula and I walked over with tea and a plan that wasn't a plan. Miss Ruth opened the door in slippers that looked like clouds. I ain't sick, she said preemptively. Just done pretending my eyes are young. We nodded like the ground is solid even when your heart shakes. We're building a ride list. Paula said, doctors, groceries, hair, church. The bench. If you feel like gossip. Miss Ruth's eyes filled, and she waved us inside, with that flapping hand old Southern ladies have perfected. My gossip could power this whole block, she said. Which amen. We created Ride Angels, a sign-up. Background checked. More hugs than honks. We added no tips. But you can pay in stories to the manual. We set a simple rule, confirm the night before. Wait at the door. Carry the tote bag. Never rush the porch goodbye. It turned a car key into a lifeline. Miss Ruth sent a note for the Small Winds board. I made it to choir with my dignity intact. The board smelled like cinnamon for an hour because the note lived in a bag with a cinnamon broom. The office started to smell like fall. Which, made me buy cider minutes later. On a Tuesday cold enough to make your teeth feel curious. A citywide text-buzzed water main break near our side of town. Low pressure. Boil notice. The whole deal. People tend to go instant apocalypse about water. We posted clear instructions, in plain words. Boil for a minute. Let it cool. Don't boil your patience. We set up a water table at the clubhouse, with donated jugs. A sign that said, take what you need. Leave what you can. And a tally to keep it honest. A neighbor who never comes to anything showed up with a truck bed full of jugs. Face like someone trying not to cry. My dad said to do this kind of thing. He mumbled. Like explaining himself to a ghost. We took the jugs and his apology to nobody, and handed him a muffin. He stayed to hand out water until his cheeks thawed and his shoulders dropped. 2 days later, taps sputtered back to normal. We dismantled the table and kept the sign. Because that sentence works for more than water. We added to the manual, boil water, not tempers. I don't know if there's a perfect ending, because life keeps shuffling the deck and dealing new hands. But there's a thing I've started doing when I walk at dusk. I count quietly. You know. In my head, signs of a neighborhood that chose the soft power of being human. 1. A ladder, leaning against a fence. No worry, it'll be stolen. 2. Chalk dust on a driveway. 3. A porch light on a timer, and a neighbor's name on a ride list. 4. A slow car, at a corner. 5. A bench with tinsel in July, because the kids thought it was funny. 6. A garden with basil that refuses to quit. 7. A swing that creaks just enough to sound like childhood. 8. A signboard where the eraser gets as much use as the chalk. 9. A manual stained with coffee. 10. A pair of plastic zip ties under a coil of twine. Ready for crafts, and absolutely nothing else. Sometimes I pass the clubhouse and hear laughter. Sometimes I pass and hear silence so comfortable it feels like a hug. Sometimes I pass and hear a cello. And I stop. And I lean against the brick. And I let the notes remind me that authority is a tool, not a costume. And neighbors are the reason the song goes on. If you need the line one more time. Here's my last breath for now. The law is the roof. The rules are the furniture. Both matter. One keeps the rain out. The other makes the place livable. Neighbors make it home. What would you do this week to make your place more home and less hallway? Who could you text right now to start a little Small Winds board on a flimsy cork? Just to see what grows. Who's bringing the cookies? 'Cause someone's gotta. Spring stepped in with a bright grin and a brand new argument, solar panels. A neighbor named Theo filled out a request to put a glossy array on his south-facing roof. Old covenants used words like discouraged and visible from the street. Written back when panels looked like garage doors laid flat. Theo's panels were slick. Black. Low profile. Like sunglasses for shingles. The first email came hot. "They're ugly," someone wrote, spelling it ugly, which, kinda undercut the point. Another said, "Property values," like it was a spell you cast to stop change. We set a special night just for this. Theo brought a small model heat-printed mini roof. Mini sun. The whole science fair. He explained how the array would sit flush. How the wiring would be hidden. How the payoff wasn't just bills, but the grid during storms. The planet we hand to kids. Paula asked the question that mattered. Can we make it look tidy? Theo said yes. He even offered to show the installer how to route conduit where nobody had to look at it before coffee. Terry surprised himself. "If the law says we can't unreasonably restrict," he said, "and my heart says the sun ain't a crime, let's write a standard that makes sense." We did. Panels allowed, if flush. Conduit discreet. No neon frames. We added, "Please post work in progress dates so your neighbor won't panic at ladders." Theo baked cookies for the crew, which made installation a community event instead of a siege. A month later, after the first bright week, Theo texted a chart that looked like a victory parade. "I'm feeding the grid," he wrote. The youth council drew a sun with a smile on the chalkboard and the word "thanks" in letters tall as a kid. A week after, another neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, retired and precise, walked the loop with me. Voice clipped but curious. "I thought I'd hate the look," she admitted. "It's tidy." She lowered her voice like she was confessing to a priest. "And if it helps the grandchildren's air, I can like a tidy panel." We slid the new standard into the manual. Roof. Furniture. Future. Water started costing more because droughts don't read newsletters. The city offered rebates for native landscaping. They've bloomed. Messy as a front bed in May. Chairoscape looks like moonscape. Someone posted, with an old photo of rocks and misery. Another posted a yard full of drought-tough sages buzzing with bees. We held a Saturday yard laugh. Hector marked off a square of turf by the clubhouse. Sunita's mom showed plants that thrive without coddling coneflower. Salvia. Muhly grass that throws a pink cloud at dusk. The city sent a guy named Ron with a hat that could shade a Buick. He talked mulch like poetry and handed out a rebate form printed in a font you could actually read. Old rules had said lawns must be green. We rewrote, front yards must look cared for. Green optional. We added no plastic grass. Because the planet isn't a doormat. We put examples on the bulletin board, 3 styles. 1 cheap and cheerful. 1 tidy. 1 a little wild with a tidy edge. Pick a vibe. The caption said, "Keep a border so your neighbor's mower doesn't cry." Al swapped a strip by his driveway for natives. Paula planted a patch of milkweed, then stood next to it like a bouncer, daring anyone to insult butterflies. Mrs. Callahan raised an eyebrow, and then offered her hose at sunrise for seedlings. Change stuck because we didn't shove, we invited. Someone grumbled about desert vibes. We offered to help them reseed their lawn with a tough fescue and a little clover that stays friendly through August. Clover brings bees. They worried. Bees bring tomatoes. Paula said. They blinked. Then nodded, like a math problem just solved itself. Election season arrived with signs like mushrooms after rain. Old Covenants had a page that screamed no political displays. Which, didn't love the Constitution much. We scrubbed it months earlier, when we redid the free speech section. But habits echo. A neighbor tore out a sign from a yard at dawn, thinking they were protecting the rules. The doorbell camera caught a shape in a hoodie, a hand yanking cardboard. A stumble that would have been funny if it wasn't rude. We posted, in big kind letters, signs allowed within reason during election season. 1 per candidate. Small enough to not eat your yard. Take them down a week after. Don't touch other people's signs. That's not neighborly, and it's not legal. The not legal line gave people pause like a speed bump. I knocked on Hoodie House. The kid, because it was a kid. Not a villain, opened with a shrug and a blush. My dad said they're trash. He muttered, "Your dad gets a vote." I said, "Not your neighbor's lawn." He put the sign back. Then he texted the youth council board and got back baked cookies for the person whose sign you touched. Chocolate chip. Too much chocolate. He did. The neighbor sent a photo of crumbs and a thumbs up with a ringed finger. Holidays teach. But so do signs. One yard put out a banner big enough to shade a sedan. We asked them to shrink it by half, and they did. Mostly because Maya's letter started with "Hey neighbor" and ended with "Thank you for caring enough to vote." Tone. Man. It's a key you don't see until it opens the door. Noise is foggy. What sounds like heaven to one ear is headache to another. On a breezy Saturday at 5 p.m. A garage band launched a guitar solo that almost peeled paint. The group chat hummed, fun loud. Do they take requests? My baby naps at 5. A decade ago. We would have poured gasoline on that thread. Now, we had tools. I walked over. Not with a badge. With a smile and hearing protection around my neck like a prop. Sounds good, I said. Meaning it. 'Cause they were tight. We got a quiet hour at 9 o'clock. Could y'all turn it down a notch and bring it in by then? Their drummer polite. Sweaty said. Sorry. Man. We didn't think. I pointed at the park. Bring it to the green next time. Like 4 o'clock. We'll make it a thing. The cellist can open. He blinked. A cello. Trust me. I said. He did. And the mashup became a legend. A cello laying down an intro. A garage band layering in like toast. Kids dancing. Terry, in a lawn chair, tapping a foot he pretended was allergic to rhythm. At 9 o'clock, the sound dropped like a curtain. We got to keep the party and the bedtime both. We added to the manual, if you can feel the bass in your kidney. It's too loud after dark. Invite the block. End on time. Ask your neighbor where their baby sleeps. Adjust. Dogs. Bless them. Also, woof. A husky named Rocket started a chorus at dawn. Howl o'clock. His human, Sam, looked like a man who loved his dog and also wanted a nap. Old HOA's mail finds that dogs can't read. New Lake Willow wrote a good dog pact that made us cheer, then chuckle at ourselves. Barking happens. If it keeps happening, talk first. Offer a walk. Share trainer tips. If all else fails, we find the human in muffins and encourage classes. Real fines only if someone really refuses. Paula texted Sam. Walk at 6, I'm up anyway. Sunita offered a trainer named Mel who speaks dog like it's her first language. Rocket learned a new trick called quiet. And Sam learned a new trick called window closed until 8. The muffins were blueberry and tasted like a truce. A different dog left gifts on lawns. We put out bag dispensers that looked like friendly fire hydrants and wrote a sign that said, We love your dog. We do not love your dog's opinion on our grass. Bags here. Trash there. Thanks. The poop decreased. The laughs increased. There's a graph in my head I'll never draw. One night. Actual graffiti showed up, spray paint. Not chalk. A tag on the back wall of the mail kiosk. Quick and jagged. We could have scrubbed and scowled. We called a muralist instead. The youth council pitched a design, a quilt of small images that meant us bench. Basil. Jello. Ladder. Sun. Swing. Dragon tail curling from the corner. The city chipped in paint, and a Saturday. The tagger wrote, "Sorry Anonymous," in the comments when the progress pics hit our neighborhood page. We said, "Come paint." Maybe they did. Maybe they watched from the curb. Either way, art covered what anger tried to claim. We set a policy with the cops, with my old team fast report. Fast cover. Then art within a week. Erase. Then embrace. Paula rhyme. Because she can't help herself. We added a line to the manual: if the wall gets loud, answer in color. Some endings sneak up wearing ordinary clothes. It was a Tuesday with no drama. I walked the loop at dusk. The pond tossed fish kisses at the surface. A kid practiced stopping a bike without skidding braking. Breathing. Brave. Mr. Jenkins sat on the bench. Kane leaned like a companion. Scarf on the back, for no reason except it looked jaunty. He patted the wood next to him. I sat. We didn't talk law or lines. We talked soup. We talked the way light catches pine needles after rain. We talked about how a neighborhood, when it's healthy, makes the world outside feel less like a storm and more like a weather report you can live with. A golf cart rolled by, no siren. Just a kid driving, with a parent boring holes into him with caution. The cart had a magnet on the side with the board's hotline. The one that says, "Hey neighbor," when you call. A raccoon waddled across the path like a disgruntled mayor. Tasha waved from the chalkboard. Taller now. Hair in a messy bun that declared independence. She'd written "bored, text us" in bubble letters. Then underlined it with a flourish that would make a prince jealous if we had princes. Which we don't. I looked at my hands. They've carried more than they look like they could. I thought about the porch, the knock, the zip ties, the quiet voice I used because loud would have broken the spell in the wrong direction. I thought about the binder I carry now. The one I open like a toolbox, not a scepter. I thought about Theo's panels and Rocket's bark, and Lourdes's bread, and Sunita's lamps, and Ricky's blinds going up like a sunrise. Chief. Mr. Jenkins said, even though I'm not anymore. He'll call me that until the sun turns off. You ready to retire? Retire, I laughed. Ask me when the basil bolts. He nodded. Till then, he said. There's chairs to set out. We sat until the stars punched little holes in the dark. The quiet hour began. Not as a rule, but as a gift. Somewhere, a cello laid down a single note that floated like a lantern. A door closed gently. Someone laughed soft. The bench was warm. The line held. Neighbors fixed what bullies broke. Then they kept fixing. Not because they were saints, but because they practiced. They learned cookies beat clipboards. And clipboards, when you absolutely need them, are better with soft corners. If you're out there with an envelope and a knot in your stomach, hear me. There's a porch light on. Even if it ain't yours yet, knock. Ask for the manual. Borrow our phrases. Rewrite yours. Bake something. Bring a ladder. Count to 10. Count to 10 in your head before you post. Call the real cops for real crimes. Call each other for everything else. You're not alone. What would you do tomorrow morning to move your shed 1 inch toward? Okay, who's the first neighbor you'll text hey to, and which rule will you rewrite? So it sounds like it's written by someone who lives on your street. Summer again. The shade sail over the playground needed a patch. Terry had a list. Sunita had snacks. The youth council had a plan and too much tape. Hector had a ladder and a joke. Ladders and Love. Volume 2. Paula had a pie cooling that made the whole clubhouse smell like an apology waiting to be accepted. We took the sale down like a troupe, with choreography. We patched. We stitched. We swore lightly, and then said sorry to the 3-year-old with big ears. We put the sail back up, and watched the shadow fall just where we wanted. People clapped like the end of a movie. Someone started a chant, for no reason. Egg yolk, Mr. Jenkins wiped a fake tear. It's beautiful, he said. My dermatologist approves. At dusk. Theo flipped on a porch light that draws moths, like a bar band draws a crowd. He waved me over. Panel paid for itself faster than they said. He grinned. Also, my kid knows what kilowatt means now. Parenting win. We high-fived like we won a medium trophy. A postcard slid under the clubhouse door. No stamp. No signature. A single sentence in careful printing. I thought power meant control. Turns out it means sharing. Paula held it up. Squinted. Smiled. Frame it, she asked. I nodded. Put it next to, for crafts only. We got a call from Oak Bend, the president with tired eyes, and now, it seemed, a lighter step. We held our first porch market. She said. Nobody argued. A kid sold bookmarks that said red. Rest. Repeat. We stole your bench idea. It ain't stealing, I said. It's potluck. Bring it back with spice. She paused. We also had our first real fight that didn't feel like war. She told me about an old man. A flag. A holiday that wasn't his. A fear that was. She told me about cookies and a chair in the middle for the problem. She told me about a handshake that looked like a pause button. I heard your voice in my head, she said. The quiet one. I swallowed. Keep it, I said. It's yours now. Back home. The youth council painted tiny kindness stones and hid them along the path. If you find one, you can move it, or keep it, or give it. The sign said. Miss Ruth found one that read, Ride Angels Forever, and put it on her windowsill next to a picture of a choir with faces like hymnals a little stiff. A lot sincere. If you walk our loop now, you'll see a quilt without fabric, solar panels, winking polite. Yards, part lawn, part meadow. Signs, when they're allowed, then gone when they should be. A mural, stitching a tag into a story. A bench wearing whatever the season gives it. A chalk dragon that appears and vanishes like a joke, the rain tells. You'll hear a dog learning to hush. A cello testing a note at 5 o'clock. A mower now and then. A child bargaining with bedtime. A laugh you can't place and don't need to. We haven't abolished rules. We gave them jobs they're good at. We haven't abolished enforcement. We moved it into the light where neighbors can see it and talk to it and soften its edges without dulling its point. And if a golf cart ever does roll with a siren again, well, no, it won't. Because in the clubhouse, in a cheap frame next to a pair of plastic zip ties, looped into a heart, hangs a sentence in careful print. Power means sharing. Anyone else got a sentence like that? They want to write down and stick on a wall where you'll trip over it on purpose. Anyone else ready to trade crowns for pie servers? Binders for manuals. Fear for practice. The city festival gave us a little booth near the lemonade stand. We hung our manual on clothespins like laundry. People stopped, flipped, smiled when they saw, "Hey neighbor," instead of "Notice of violation." A teen in a glitter jacket asked, "Can I copy the boredom hotline?" "Copy it. Remix it. Own it," Tasha said, hands moving like punctuation. The teen grinned. "We're gonna call ours Mission Control." Tasha wrote her number on a sticky note in case they wanted a launch checklist. A man with a tired face and a hopeful wife asked, "What do you do when your board president is a Karen?" We all breathed the quiet breath. "Document," I said. "Show up. Run. Rewrite. Partner with your city attorney. Find your Paula. Find your Hector. Find your kid counsel. Bake. It's slow. It's worth it." He nodded, like someone memorizing a map. On the drive home, Jenna squeezed my knee at a red light. "You know, this could have gone the other way," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It goes the other way all the time. Until it doesn't." We turned onto our street. The shade sail held. The bench wore a knit hat because the youth council lost a bet with the weather. The mural looked like a story you could walk into. Theo's panels napped. Rocket did not howl. A kindness stone peeked from a hedge. "You belong." I parked. The porch light clicked on. Somewhere, a cello found its note. Listen. That's as close to an ending as you get in a place that keeps choosing to begin. Anyone else coming over with chairs? We got room. We got pie. We got a manual that starts with, "Hey,